They are genuinely dispersing those funds into the community. But the second part, as I said, is what's about the future of the REC. And that's why we got an independent report done on that. And really that decision sits with the Samoan government, and of course we stand ready to help in any way we can.
What have they asked for in terms of help with the REC?
Nothing. It's purely just that the independent report has been commissioned and it's now been passed over to the Samoan government.
Have you read it?
No, I haven't read it, but I've got a sense of what are the different options that are in there. But ultimately, that's now their decision, and we're happy to engage with them on whatever decisions they may have about it.
And will New Zealand fully back Samoa, no matter what way it goes, including putting the money behind that backing, if, say, one of the options
as I
is to
said,
remove the REC?
Yeah, look, I don't want to presuppose an outcome because there'll be a range of views about what they might want to do with the REC, and I don't want to jump to a conclusion one way or another. But suffice to say, my message has been right from day one. We'll do the right thing.
Why aren't you going to visit the REC?
Sorry?
Why aren't you going to visit the REC?
We've got a pretty busy full 2 days. I've visited it in the past. When I came up here for Chogam, I managed to get out on one of our military assets and see it in situ myself. And I've followed very closely, making sure that as we remove the fuel off the ship, making sure that it's sealed off. I followed that very, very closely through that period of time last year. So from my point of view, it's now an issue that sits with the Samoan government, and of course we stand ready to help.
Prime Minister, your Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Peters said underwater vessels and RECs make great underwater assets for tourism, nodding towards that could be a future for the vessel. Have you considered that? Have you had any talk with your counterparts here about that being a tourism potential?
I have in the past, yes. I mean, obviously, it could be a fantastic tourism asset. But again, those are things in fairness. We're doing everything. It was an unfortunate accident, which we've apologised for. We've taken responsibility for it. We've worked our way through the issues as we've been dealing with them, and we've now got to the final piece, which is what do we want to do with the REC. And in fairness, those are exactly the kind of trade-offs that they'll be thinking through. Is this a tourism opportunity? And what other mitigations will be needed with the over the REC over the years going forward. And so let's let them digest that report, and then as I said, New Zealand's very happy to work with them on that.
And just for all points of clarity, the money that New Zealand has given Samoa in regards to this is full and final. That part of the conversation is closed.
Yeah, there's two parts to the conversation, as I said. There's the full and final settlement that we reached with the Samoan government of $6 million New Zealand dollars. That's now being dispersed, as I said, to the community. And that's really an internal issue for how the Samoans, we pay that to the government. How they disperse that to the community is really up to them. And then there is a second issue, as I said, on the back of the independent shipwreck assessment report to work out what other support might be needed on an ongoing basis depending upon what decisions they make around the REC and how they might want to manage it going forward. So, we're very, it's in fairness, it's about letting them digest that report, determine their own answers, and then we'll work with them on that.
You've been lobbying quite hard over the visa waiver, visa-free access. Did the Samoan Prime Minister sort of understand New Zealand's point of view and its concerns around overstaying, or is he going to continue to push that? Oh, look, I think the voice across the Pacific we've heard very clearly, even in the first 2 years of our government. I mean, you've seen us move and extend 2-year, multiple entry visitor visas, from 1 year to 2 years. You've seen us say if it's an Australian visitor visa, we'll honour that here in New Zealand. We've made tremendous progress in rapid processing of visas now. It's been a threefold increase. I think we're down to just under 8 days. And as you've seen, recently and last year as well, we've tried to lower the fees. So it's down to 25%. We have an expedited pathway for fast track that we need to get visas through, and also we're building some capacity here in Apia to support visas here as well. So it's just giving a sense of that then on the other side, if you're in the New Zealand's position, we run a legal immigration system, a smart immigration system, and we just need to make sure that we've got any risks managed. And so I think we've done a good job of liberalising the Pacific visas over the last 2 years. You've seen us do it consistently, of trying to create opportunities to make it easier, and certainly 2-year multiple entry visas has been a big help. There's more overstayers from.
Picked up on Arthur Renee's petition though, and if as you've said repeatedly, Samoa is a family member. Why have those barriers there at all? Well,
again, that goes before a select committee. That's a time for us to digest that through the petitions and through the select committee, and then the Minister of Immigration will look at that as well.
But there are 60 other countries that enjoy electronic authorisation into the country, and our Pacific family members
don't
have the same benefits.
But in immigration settings, as you would understand, we want legal migration. We've tried twice before to have visa-free periods of time with Pacific visas, and we had a huge number of overstayers. We had a huge number of our hospitals and our schools being filled up. And as I understand, that's the history of it in the late 80s and the early 2000s again. So all we're doing is managing some of the risks that we see, and that's all we ask our immigration agencies to do. Is to, New Zealanders, you could rightly understand, wouldn't want to make sure that we've got a really. You see what happens around the world when immigration gets out of control. It's out of control and it's not legal and it's not managed. We have a very much a risk-based approach to it all, and that doesn't. As you're saying, we're trying to liberalise what we can do in the Pacific, and we'll continue to open and look at it. We'll obviously look at the petition. The Minister of Immigration will take that on board and see what more we can do. But we just have to manage the risks, and sadly there are risks from different countries as to that puts huge pressure on our systems at home.
Does your government overstate the risk though of overstayers?
No.
Well, Erica Stanford, the immigration minister, I did a story about her overstating the number of overstayers, saying that there were tens of thousands more than expected. So we talk about there being an issue domestically with anti-migrant sentiment.
No, I'm not saying that. That's not what I said. What I said. Any country, any of the 195, have legal, smart immigration, and so our settings have been very smart, and I think we've got the balance right. Where New Zealanders can say, "Hey, listen, we welcome immigrants to New Zealand. We never want to be an anti-immigrant country." Where it's lost formation around the world in other countries is because they haven't had a smart legal protection of their borders, and so that's all I'm alluding to there. But with respect to the Pacific, as I said, you've seen us as a government do more than any previous government in New Zealand. By liberalising it. We will take the petition, it'll go through the select committee process, and I know the Minister will look at it very closely.
Prime Minister, you now been honoured with the Matai title by appeal. It comes with a big responsibility given the cultural meaning behind it for Samoa. Now you've been honoured, what does this mean to you, and how would you carry this in regards to what you've been honoured by the people of Apia, not just Samoa, but the people of Apia that's been graciously given this title for you? Yeah,
look, it's a tremendous honour, as I've said before, and it drives a connection between me and the people of Apia. And you've seen under my government, Samoa is our biggest source of investment and development contributions. You're seeing us, even on this visit, we're making further commitments, further investments to support and accelerate Apia, but also broader Samoa as well. So that just reinforces that commitment, which I think is really important.
Prime Minister, we've heard the word family over and again today with Samoa and New Zealand, yet back home Pacific unemployment has more than doubled under your government. You have no Pacific MPs, cuts to the Ministry for Pacific People and Pacific Languages. How do you back that familial tie? Yeah, look, we've got work to do with respect to unemployment in New Zealand in general, and that, as I've said before, is because of the immutable laws of economics, which is if spending gets out of control, inflation gets out of control, interest rates go high, economy slows down and people lose their jobs. And so what we've been doing is working very hard back to make sure we've got good financial management so that people can get back and connected to work. But I know it's been a very difficult and challenging time in New Zealand. That's why if you care about lower middle income working New Zealanders across New Zealand, across all of New Zealand who have been hurt so badly and are doing it tough and still are today, that is a function of not managing an economy well. And we saw that in the COVID report last week, and it underscores again what we're trying to do as a government.
Has the government been asked that? Oh yeah, go.
Prime Minister Schmidt said that some big countries in the region are bullies. He cited tariffs, pursuit of oil, pursuit of resources. Do you think the United States or China are bullies?
Well, what I said to him, and it actually stemmed from our conversation this morning, which was to say, look, as you heard me say for over a year and a bit now, that we're moving from a world that's moving from rules-based to power-based, and from multilateral to multipolar, and so that's not a surprise. We've seen, we don't agree with the US tariffs position. We don't think that's good for New Zealand. We don't think it's good for the world. We can articulate our views back into the American system as we have done, but also we've got to be principled, but also very pragmatic and get on with it. And you've seen us do that. Despite tariffs, New Zealand has been able to grow its exports to America by 8% over the last year, as challenging as that has been. So it's not a surprise. You've heard me say that in my State of the Nation speech again last year in India and Raisina. We moved from rules to power. We're moving from economics to security. We're moving from efficiency to resilience. They are the big three megatrends we see.
Were you impressed by the Samoan Prime Minister on New Zealand's response to developments out of the States?
Sorry?
Were you were you asked by the Samoan Prime Minister about New Zealand's statements and positioning relative to the Iran war?
No, not at all.
Just further to
Has New Zealand been asked to send a ship to the Strait of Hormuz by the US?
No.
He's been speaking to people about that.
No, we haven't had any formal outreach at all. Obviously, the Straits of Hormuz are pretty important to New Zealand, but no, we haven't had any formal ask at all, and I don't know whether we will be asked, frankly. But again, if we were, then that's something we'd take back to cabinet and have to have a cabinet decision around.
And just on that, on the Canadian Prime Minister has proactively said, quote, Canada is not participating in the offensive operations of the US and Israel and will not either. That's a direct quote. Can New Zealand say the same?
Well, again, you've seen the UK say similar remarks about supporting the defensive effort of particularly the Middle Eastern powers that are being indiscriminately attacked by Iran, and I imagine that is what Mark's talking to and referencing as well. From a New Zealand point of view, we haven't been participated in this action. We're not central to the region. We're not central to as a player in the region at all. All I can say to you is we haven't been formally asked. We're probably unlikely to be so, but if we were, that is something we would be considering, and exactly those are the kind of conversations we would be having as a cabinet.
Just further to Annika's question, why not rule out what the petition is asking for rather than send it to a select committee? Because your stance seems quite strong, as you've explained. Why not rule out adding those specific countries to the electronic process?
Well, I'd just say to you, look at the position that we've taken over the last 2 years. I mean, we are the government that extended multiple entry visas from 1 year to 2 years. We are the government that said if it's good enough for Australia, for Pacifica people going to Australia, it's good enough to come into New Zealand to make it easier. We're the government that's worked hard on the processing to make it 3 times faster. We're the government that has lowered the price by 25%. So, we are constantly looking at what we can do to get rid of inefficiencies and frustrations and irritants that people are dealing with. But all I was just highlighting was we've got a risk-based immigration system that works for New Zealand, and it's constantly evolving. So it's not unreasonable for us to actually hear the select committee and understand it and understand the implications. Because I think if you're a government that's not listening, that's not good either. And so we need to understand this. It doesn't mean that we will do it. Doesn't mean we won't do it. But in fairness, it's new. It's a petition that deserves to be properly debated and discussed. Then we'll take that on as a government and see what where we are.
Last year you said that visa-free travel for Pacific nationals isn't a priority. Has that changed since?
Well, what you've seen from us is exactly as I've just said. Over 2 years, I think what we've delivered in 24 months is pretty impressive. That we've actually just done what we can do to make sure we can manage the risk, but also improve the access to visas for Pacifica people coming to New Zealand. And I'm really proud of that. It doesn't preclude us. We'll continue to look at that. We've got a very dynamic system. We've asked for it not to be static. We've asked for it to be risk adjusted, and as a result, that means we constantly look and reappraise, lots of different situations.
Do you expect Lord Whakawhenua to be raising this with you tomorrow as well?
Not sure, but he and I know each other. We met with our wives and had lunch together when he was Speaker of the House when I was last in Tonga. We've spoken subsequently since. We were trying to catch up in Auckland actually, but I was caught up with obviously the landslides when he was in town that week, and so I'm sure there'll be a range of issues that we'll discuss there as well. I mean, the dominant one is clearly, is our region set up well with respect to Iran and dealing with the fuel constraints that may exist there, and obviously the price impacts and what that does to economic damage and other things. But as I said to you today, in New Zealand, I want everyone to be reassured we're in a good position. I've spoken to a number of leaders. I spoke to Anthony Albanese yesterday. I spoke to the Emir of Qatar a couple of days earlier, and the MBZ, the ruler of the UAE. And so, we're in a good shape and a good position with respect to our fuel supplies. But what we're doing is also getting prepared to think ahead. If this is a protracted, conflict that goes out for several months, we want to make sure that we have thought through some of those things now rather than later.
Last one, guys.
What did you speak to?
Just about the situation with respect to what we're observing in the Middle East, and also primarily about fuel supply. And that we actually want our officials across both countries staying close and sharing information and intelligence. We have a slightly different mix, every country does, as to where they source their fuels from, and essentially that's the same offer I gave the Prime Minister today, and I'll do it.
Are we looking at taking oil from Australia?
No. It's just making genuinely so. I just would say to New Zealanders, be reassured. We have our ministerial oversight group meeting on this every day. We have our group of CEOs summarising it all at the end of each and every day. I get the update every evening, and we've put a full court press on it. We've got 6 or 7 ministers in there. All the government agencies are involved. They're bringing our picture together very well. In terms of fuel supply, it's not a pressing issue, but I just want us to be prepared and thinking ahead, and we may never need it. But it's just being conscious of, okay, well, what would be the top 10 challenges that we would have in 3 or 4 months' time that we should, is there something we can do about that now rather than wait till then?
And how was your first dance as a Matai?
I think I'll leave that for you to judge, because Annika, I've seen you dance, and it will be, I'll be a high bar to achieve, I suspect. So apologies in advance if I've caused tremendous offence. But no, it's great. Look, it's great to be here. It is a fantastic country, and it's filled with awesome people. And I meant it genuinely. I'm really, really proud of our Samoan Kiwi community at home. I mean, they have come to New Zealand and they've worked hard and they've achieved and contributed so much, and they have enriched New Zealand tremendously. And so we should be really proud about that. And it's a pretty unique circumstance when I think of the 195 countries in the world, to see 2 countries like New Zealand and Samoa as close as we are, able to have conversations we can, and the connections we do is fantastic. Cool. Awesome. We're going to leave it.
How big of an issue is transnational crime in Tonga, and how does it affect New Zealand?
Yeah, look, it's an issue in Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, New Zealand and Australia. And so, our conversation over the last, 12 months really has been with all the leaders, is that we need to work together in a much more, not just talk about working together, but actually work together on some of the missions and the operations that have been going down. That's why we've brought the Comptroller of Customs and the Police Commissioner with us from New Zealand, because they've built very good relationships with their counterparts here in Samoa, but across the whole region. And, we're up against it. We're up against, crime families in South America that are doing extraordinary things now to send drugs into our region. And actually the border and the security is the Pacific. It's not just the New Zealand border alone as well. So it's very important that we work together, and that's what those agreements were about this afternoon as well.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, team. Have a good day. See you a bit later.